If you're 60 years old, you have fewer than 1,000 weeks of healthy, active life ahead of you. Most people have never thought about it in those terms, and once they do, a lot of what they're still spending that time on looks very different. Here are 8 things worth stopping right now, while there's still time to make it matter. Number 1 is going to sound like the wrong advice at first. It's the kind of thing that goes against every instinct built up over decades of careful financial habit, and yet for a significant number of people over 60, it's exactly the right move. That will make more sense in a moment. Number 6 is the one that tends to create the most resistance. It touches something most people feel deeply, and once the full picture is there, it tends to shift how people think about what it actually means to be generous to the people they love most. That one will come back around too. Let's start at the beginning. Number 1. Stop saving as aggressively as you have been. That sentence needs to be handled carefully, because the instinct to dismiss it is understandable. Saving is the habit that got most people to 60 with anything at all. The discipline is real, and the results are real. But here is what is also real. Money that never gets spent provides no value to the person who saved it, and the window for spending it in a way that is genuinely meaningful, with the health, the energy, and the time to actually enjoy it, is narrower than most people want to admit. This is not an argument for recklessness. It is an argument for intention. The question worth asking at 60 is not how much more can be saved, but whether current savings are sufficient for what retirement actually requires. That question can only be answered with a real plan, a clear picture of projected income, projected expenses, and what the gap looks like. Without that clarity, the default is to keep saving indefinitely, sacrificing today for a future that may never arrive in the form imagined. With that plan in hand, many people discover they have significantly more freedom than they assumed. The sacrifice was real. The permission to ease off has been earned. Number 2. Stop spending money on things that don't produce lasting value. This one requires some honest self-examination. The useful exercise is simple. Look back at the last $1,000 spent on discretionary purchases and ask 2 questions. How many of those things produced genuine satisfaction in the moment? And how many are still producing any value a month later or a year later? For most people, the answers reveal a clear pattern. The purchases that hold up, that continue to matter, tend to be experiences rather than objects. Time spent with people who matter. A trip that becomes a story told for years. A meal that turned into a real conversation. These compound in memory in a way that a new appliance or an impulse purchase simply does not. Redirecting spending toward what actually lasts is not about deprivation. It is about getting a better return on the time it took to earn the money in the first place. Number 3. Stop performing a version of yourself that isn't real. This one is harder to quantify, but no less important. By 60, most people have spent decades adapting to what various roles, relationships, and professional contexts have required of them. That adaptation is not dishonest. It is how people function in the world. But there is a version of it that goes too far, where the performance becomes the default and the authentic self gets quieter over time. The research on aging is consistent on this point. The people who report the highest levels of satisfaction in later life are those who feel free to be themselves, not the version that manages others' expectations, not the version that performs confidence or ease, the actual version, with all its specificity and imperfection. The freedom to stop performing is one of the genuine privileges of getting older. Most people claim it far later than they need to. Number 4. Stop the habit of self-criticism. This is related to the previous point, but distinct enough to deserve its own entry. Self-criticism, in moderate doses, is useful. It is how people learn and course correct. But the version that persists into the 60s and beyond, the reflexive tendency to catalog personal failings, to default to negative self-assessment, To hold oneself to a standard that would never be applied to a friend, that version has outlived its usefulness by decades. The quality of the internal relationship sets the floor for everything else. The people in a person's life tend to reflect the energy that person brings to themselves. Building a life surrounded by people who are encouraging, honest, and generous starts with being that way toward oneself first. Number 5. Stop worrying about what cannot be controlled. Worry is a form of borrowed suffering. It draws from the present to pay for a future that may never arrive, and if it does arrive, will almost certainly look different from what was imagined. The past is fixed. It cannot be revised or retrieved. The future is genuinely uncertain. Neither of those facts changes based on how much mental energy is directed at them. What changes with worry is the quality of the present, and the present is the only place where life is actually happening. There is a practical discipline here that goes beyond simply deciding to worry less. It involves actively redirecting attention toward what is within reach, within control, within the current day. For many people, that shift is the single most significant change available to them at this stage of life, and it costs nothing to make. Number 6. Stop financially supporting adult children at the expense of retirement security. This is the one that carries the most emotional weight, and it deserves to be handled with honesty and care. The instinct to help adult children is not just understandable, it is one of the more generous impulses in human nature. The question is not whether that impulse is good. It is whether acting on it in a particular way actually serves the people it is intended to help. Here is the asymmetry that matters. Adult children have access to financial instruments specifically designed for their situation. Student loans exist because education takes time and money. Mortgages exist because home ownership requires capital that accumulates over time. Business financing exists because new ventures need runway. These tools are available precisely because borrowing against future earnings is a legitimate and widely used path to building a financial life. Retirement has no equivalent. There is no loan for lost compounding. There is no financial product that replaces Social Security income that was delayed, or portfolio withdrawals that happened a decade too early. When retirement savings are redirected toward adult children who have other options, the cost is permanent and it compounds in the wrong direction. The genuinely loving outcome, in most cases, is for a parent to arrive at retirement financially stable. A parent with resources is an asset to the whole family. A parent who has depleted those resources, even in service of people they love, becomes a source of stress that no one intended and everyone feels. Before moving on, if this kind of direct, practical perspective on retirement is useful, take a moment to hit the like button and subscribe. There is a great deal more content on exactly these topics coming, and subscribing ensures it reaches the people who could most benefit from it. It takes a few seconds, and it makes a real difference. Number 7. Stop taking health for granted. This is perhaps the least controversial item on the list, and simultaneously the most consequential. Retirement is not a single experience. It is a chapter that can span 20 or 30 years, and the quality of that entire chapter is shaped almost entirely by physical health. Money matters. Relationships matter. Purpose matters. But without the physical capacity to act on any of those things, they cannot be fully used. The investment required is not extreme. Consistent movement, walking, swimming, cycling, whatever is genuinely sustainable, produces measurable returns in longevity, cognitive function, and mood. Attention to nutrition protects against the chronic conditions that quietly erode quality of life over time. Maintaining muscle mass, which the body loses at an accelerating rate after 60, is one of the most well-documented contributors to independence and mobility in later life. None of this requires a radical transformation. It requires consistency, starting now. Number 8. Stop taking time for granted. This is the one that ties everything else together, and it comes back to where this started. Fewer than 1,000 weeks. That is the statistical picture for a healthy, active 60-year-old. Less than 20 years. And not all of those years look the same. The early ones, when energy, mobility, and cognitive sharpness are all still relatively intact, are disproportionately valuable. They are the ones most capable of being shaped by decisions made right now. Every year that passes without intention is a year that cannot be recovered. Here is what connects all 8 items on this list. Every single one of them. Saving unnecessarily. Spending on things that don't last. Performing for others. Criticizing instead of accepting. Worrying about what cannot be changed. Supporting others at the cost of one's own foundation, neglecting health, is a way of spending that 1,000 weeks on something that does not return what it costs. The people who move through this chapter with the most satisfaction are not the ones who had the most money or the fewest problems. They are the ones who understood at some point that time was the real currency and made their choices accordingly. They stopped doing the things that drained it without return and became more deliberate about what deserved it. That kind of clarity is available to anyone willing to look for it. And the best moment to start is always the one that's actually here.